know, right out those doors, I spent several seasons as one of the sliding monsters in the Ghost Town Scare Zone, and I loved every single second of it. But nowadays, I write and help create the nightmares behind Knott's Scary Farm attractions. But I'm also a historian. I wrote this book on the history of Knott's Scary Farm. Thank you. Yeah, it's available over in the Legacy store if you're interested. But this event is very near and dear to my heart, which is why it's so awesome to be here with you at the world-famous Birdcage Theater to help kick things off for the 50th anniversary of Knott's Scary Farm. Are you excited? Well, tonight we're going to celebrate some of the past highlights of Knott's Scary Farm, kind of show how we got to where we are today, and then we're going to talk about some of the announcements that we just made and how some of those attractions tie back to the event's history. But I'm guessing since we're all here for this announcement event, we're all fellow fans of Knott's Scary Farm, but perhaps you may not be as familiar as to what the event was like before you started going. Unless you've been attending the entire time. Anybody go to year one? One. Hooray! Cool! Well, for the rest of us, you might be a little curious as to what the event was like before you started going. And so to kick things off tonight, we're going to give a very miniature, brief crash course on the history of Knott's Scary Farm. Like I said, I wrote this big whole book about it, so I'm not going to ramble on forever about it, but this is going to be rapid fire to kind of help bring you up to speed and help you understand and appreciate even more the wonderful surprises we have in store for this season. And by the way, if you've ever seen any of these kind of presentations before, awesome. But I'm going to be sharing some photos today of Knott's Scary Farm that have never been published before, just for this presentation. So it's going to be a little bit different. Strap yourselves in, it's going to go by pretty fast. So if we want to bring down the lights a little bit, we'll get this thing started. And here we go. All right. So, well, Knott's Scary Farm did debut back in 1973. It's indeed the longest running Halloween themed event at any theme park in the entire world. All others trace their roots back to Knott's. Yeah, and throughout the years, a lot of people have asked me, how did the event begin? There's a lot of factors that went into all of it, but generally speaking, I narrowed down to one person. That person was an actor named Larry Vincent, who portrayed a character named Seymour, Master of the Macabre, also known as Sinister Seymour. He was a famous television horror host here in Southern California in the early 1970s, and his shows consisted of B-horror movies. And Seymour would periodically interrupt the films and crack jokes about how terrible the movies are. He would affectionately refer to his viewers, his fans, as fringies, because they were on the fringe of lunacy for liking such terrible, trashy films. Well, to promote his show, he took it on the road and performed it live at local movie theaters here in Southern California. And the format would be the same as his TV show, but in front of a live audience. So there'd be a horror movie up on the big screen, and Seymour would be there live in person, cracking jokes. He took that concept to a couple local theme parks here in Southern California, but the venues were not ideal. They didn't really lend themselves to the eerie environment that matched Seymour. And so in the process of looking for a new and improved venue, Seymour's people contacted Knott's Berry Farm. And they said, hey, Knott's Berry Farm, we understand you have the John Wayne Theater, which is now the Walter Knott Theater. And we understand it's environmentally controlled and it's got a movie projector. Well, can we have Seymour perform there? Well, Knott's loved the idea and said, wait a minute, we can build a Halloween event around Seymour. And voila, that was the birth of Knott's Halloween Haunt, now Knott's Scary Farm. And so the park dove right into the concept of a large-scale Halloween party. All the employees participated. The log ride was turned into Satan's Sawmill, and the Calico Mine ride was turned into the Haunted Mine. And those were like the main scare attractions in the early days of Scary Farm, packed with live actors terrorizing everybody. And there was the now defunct attraction, the Haunted Shack, which was, yeah, Missed the Haunted Shack. Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, the Haunted Shack was all year round permanent walk-through attraction here at Knott's Berry Farm, kind of like a mystery house, but they had live actors during the haunt. And speaking of live monsters, Ghost Town had the very first Scare Zone monsters on the planet. They were the Wild West stunt show personnel dressed as monsters to roam the streets and engage the guests. And in the early days of Scary Farm, there was all kinds of live entertainment, carnival-like sideshows and illusions and magicians. They repurposed the stunt shows, all kinds of things like bands and dancing. The event was covered with live entertainment. Every single store and employee participated and dressed up, from food services to merchandise, ticketing, ride operators, ushers, on and on and on. And within the buildings of Ghost Town, they were turned into the startling peek-ins with eerie lighting and sound effects and masks on the mannequins. And outside of those buildings, the park decoration was wonderful. Ghost Town became shrouded in scare cloth and eerie lighting and fog. I mean, Knott's went all in. By 1977, they did introduce the first maze built solely for Knott's Scary Farm, the 10 Chilling Chambers. The Chilling Chambers for short. So that maze set a new standard for Knott's Scary Farm, because every single maze at this event can trace its roots back to the Chilling Chambers. And after Seymour hosted the first two haunts, other celebrity hosts got involved, people like Wolfman Jack, Weird Al Yankovic, and the longest running host in Knott's Scary Farm's history, Elvira. We love Elvira. Well, by the 1980s, the event grew with more monsters and things like sliders and the Ghost Town Scare Zone, and the monster looks were becoming more advanced and identifiable as Knott's Scary Farm monsters. And by the late 1980s, the event grew with more and more mazes to accommodate the massive swarms of crowds going to Knott's Scary Farm. These mazes had more identity with their names and early forms of storytelling, which paved the way to the powerhouse mazes of the 1990s. Legendary mazes like Lair of the Vampire, Dominion of the Dead, Nightmares, Industrial Evil, so many more legendary mazes that really kind of established the high quality of maze design we see today at the event. And in time, other scare zones were added aside from Ghost Town, like the Gauntlet, the Swamp, Carnival, Silver Bullet Mine Town, others like Necropolis. So all of a sudden, the event was covering the entire park, making way for groundbreaking mazes like the Carnival of Carnivorous Clowns in 3D, to classics like the Asylum, the Doll Factory, 13 Acts Murder Manor, Trick or Treat, and so many more that really raised the production value of these different mazes. And in time, interactivity would soon be added with attractions like the Skeleton Key Rooms and Trapped, and those led to Infected and Bloodline, where the guests become active participants within the attractions. And throughout the years, the show productions grew between things like The Hanging, to Puppet Up, to Zamora, to Dr. Kleber, to the Misfit of Magic, Ed Alonzo, who performed on this very stage, which is so awesome. But yeah, and then eventually theatricality would be added with attractions like Paranormal Incorporated, The Hollow, Forsaken Lake, Origins, The Grimoire, and that, my dear friends, in a nutshell, brings us up to date. Whew, I made it. All right, I told you it's going to go by fast. Thank you. Obviously, that's just scratching the surface. I mean, thousands and thousands of factors have gone into making Knott's Scary Farm what it is today, but that's a general summary. And so now that we're up to date, let's talk about some of these announcements that were made. I'm going to talk about a couple of the attractions I worked on and some of the inspiration and how they tie back to the event's history. So the first one we're going to talk about is Cinema Slasher. Are you excited for Cinema Slasher? Yes. So the inspiration behind this is pretty simple. People have been saying for years, going through Knott's Scary Farm is like walking through your very own horror movie. And so we thought, well, geez, what if we did that? And so I conceptualized this attraction with industry designer John Cook. I wrote it, he designed it, and it was overseen by Ken Parks, who's the corporate director of creative development for Cedar Fair, the parent company of Knott's Berry Farm. And we worked very closely with the eventual co-designer and art director assigned to the project here at Knott's Berry Farm, Daniel Miller. And so, to reiterate the basic premise, well, for Cinema Slasher, guests are invited into this local movie theater that's proudly hosting its Trio of Terror Film Festival. All three films star the most famous masked horror movie villain of all time, the Slasher of the Dark. The only problem is, this movie theater burned down 50 years ago on this very night, and it's mysteriously reappeared. Ooh. So guests go inside of this theater and then go through the screens and find themselves trapped within the worlds of these three movies. The three movies are Trick or Treat, Camp Gonna Getcha, and Slaughterhouse. So will the guests succumb to the evil Slasher of the Dark, or will they find themselves trapped forever in this very haunted movie theater? So there's tons of references to Knott's Scary Farm's past in that brief little description, starting with the main antagonist of the maze, the Slasher of the Dark. So if you didn't know, Slasher of the Dark, it was a Knott's Scary Farm overlay to the Kingdom of the Dinosaurs attraction back in 1994 and 1995. It was about a serial killer attacking people inside of a theme park dark ride. Fast forward many years later, in 2016, when the Skeleton Key Rooms became standalone miniature scare experiences, well, one of them was named Slasher, which was about a 1980s serial killer attack. And so the main antagonist for Cinema Slasher is inspired by those past characters. Now, the three movies we go into are, of course, inspired by three Scary Farm past attractions. The first is Trick or Treat, and that allowed, that allowed guests to go into the Green Witch's house, Sarah Marshall's house, but it was modernized, and we were attacked by her evil minions, the Tricksters. In our variant, we go into the house, but it is a sorority house where there's a massive college Halloween party taking place that's under attack by the Slasher of the Dark. So it's kind of got your typical horror movie tropes, but it's kind of our nod to like the classic 1970s slasher films. The second movie is Camp Gonna Getcha. That was an overlay to the Timber Mountain log ride from 1996 through 2000, and that was kind of like Evil Scouts taking over the mountain. In our version, guests are going into a forest summer camp that's under attack by another version of the Slasher of the Dark. So it's kind of our ode to the classic 1980s summer camp slasher films. Now, the last movie is Slaughterhouse. The first time Slaughterhouse appeared at Knott's Scary Farm as a maze was way back in 1987 inside the Berry Tales Playhouse over in Camp Snoopy. And it was kind of like a Bloody Butcher theme. Many years later, also in Camp Snoopy, another version of Slaughterhouse came along, and then it ultimately became Uncle Willie's Barbecue Slaughterhouse. Just a lot of blood and guts. The inspiration behind our variant is more of like the torture porn films of the 2000s. So over-the-top gore. So consider yourselves warned. But as you can imagine, myself, John Cook, Daniel Miller, Ken Parks, we had a lot of fun reimagining those past themes for Cinema Slasher. The next one we worked on is The Chilling Chambers. Are you excited for The Chilling Chambers? Yeah. So this is in tribute in name alone to the first maze built solely for Knott's Scary Farm, which you just learned about, that debuted in 1977. And just like Cinema Slasher, I conceptualized this with John Cook, Ken Parks, and the eventual co-designer and art director assigned to the project, Gus Kruger, here at Knott's Berry Farm. So if you were born and you were old enough and actually went to Knott's Scary Farm way back in 1997 for the 25th anniversary, well, you might have gone through, some people remember it, you might have gone through the 25th Shiver Anniversary Tribute Maze, and it was fun, but it was kind of like a hodgepodge of different themes all kind of thrown together, but we were looking at trying to create something that had a little more narrative cohesion, because when you have bits and pieces of these past attractions all jammed into one venue, and themes that have nothing to do with each other, we wanted to find a way to kind of pull that together. And so one of the tools that we implemented to try to help us pull that together is we created a narrator, a host for the chilling chambers, which we named the Keeper, who you met a little earlier. And the Keeper is a tribute to the first host of Knott's Scary Farm, Sinister Seymour. But the Keeper is a brand new character inspired by Seymour, but he's on the creepier and more scary kind of side of things. He's more the macabre and the sinister side of things. But he does work as a way to inform the guests as to what they're seeing when they go through this attraction. Because we know not every Scary Farm generation is going to be familiar with the past themes inside of the chilling chamber. So he works as a way to kind of pull things together, help us pull things together. So myself and John Cook and Gus and Ken and all the rest of the team that's putting it together, we're really excited for you to check it out. Now, before we wrap things up, there is one other thing I wanted to talk about briefly. I mentioned at the top of all of this that I spent several seasons as one of the monsters here at Knott's Scary Farm. My character was a werewolf named Rage the Werewolf. So that's Rage 1.0 there on the right-hand side with the green witch. And then after a couple of seasons, they created and customized a prosthetic that they would glue to my face every single night. And so that's Rage 2.0 on the left. But as kind of a fun little show and tell, if we want to bring up the lights, I brought my original Rage 1.0 mask, as well as my 2.0 prosthetic, as well as some of my bits and pieces from my wardrobe and my sliding gloves. These things help me terrorize thousands of people throughout the years. And, one of the reasons I brought this stuff was because, all the years I went to Knott's Scary Farm as a guest before I was ever involved, I never got to see any of this stuff. I mean, we never had a legacy museum or these announcement events, so I kind of brought these historic relics as a fun thing to share with you. But now that you've gotten to know me just a little bit over the past few minutes, I also brought these as almost a fun kind of reminder that there's humans behind the mask, and there's humans behind the scenes who make the magic of Knott's Scary Farm. Since 1973, thousands of extremely talented people have made Knott's Scary Farm what it is. And so all of us who are involved with it nowadays, we stand on the shoulders of those pioneers. But none of that means anything without you, the fans of Knott's Scary Farm. Picture the first time you ever locked eyes with a Knott's Scary Farm monster. The first time you heard the rattle of a shaker can, or the first time you ever saw a slider sliding up to you. Think about all the laughs and the screams that you have shared with friends and family throughout the years. This 50th anniversary celebration is dedicated to those memories, and it's dedicated to all of you. On behalf of Knott's Scary Farm, I'm Ted Dougherty. Thank you so much. So enjoy the 50th anniversary. Thank you.
Y'all ready for a hang? Well, people of Calico, the time has come for us to end the misery that has beset our town. We have captured the witch, Sarah Marshall, and she will stand trial for her crimes. Bring forth the accused! Sarah Marshall, you are accused of the crime of witchcraft. How do you plead?
Not guilty. I'm a witch.
Liar!
This is insane. Some malady has infected your minds. I'm no witch. You must see that what you are doing is wrong. I'm innocent. You have no proof.
We have proof! Our crops have failed. Our children are missing. You are to blame. As judge and lawman of the town of Calico, I sentence you to hang by the neck until you are dead. We will have justice! No!
All fire and fury signify nothing. You are weak. You are nothing.
You got something to say, witch?